Hare Krishna, Prabhu, you are on the mute. Or
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Srinvatam Sokata Krishna Punya Savana Kirtanaha Hridayantastre Vadami Vidunati Sudhi Satam Nasta Prayesu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhaviti Naistiki Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangu Langayate Girimyat Kipatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Sri Guru Dinatarinam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram. Hare Krishna everyone. Thanks for joining. Today's chapter is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, and Text 26. This chapter is called the Descriptions of the Characteristics of King Puranjana. Text 26. Katam Kanja Palaksaksi Kasya Siha Kutah Sati Imamopa Purim Bhiru Kim Chikitsasi Samsame. Translation by Divine Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki Jai. My dear Lotus Eye, kindly explain to me where are you coming from, who you are, and whose daughter you are. You appear very chaste. What is the purpose of your coming here? What are you trying to do? Please explain all these things to me. Purport? The first aphorism is in the Vedanta Sutra is called the Athartha Brahma Jigyansa. In the human form of life, one should put many questions to himself and to his intelligence. In the various form of life, lower than human life, the intelligence does not go beyond the range of life's primary necessities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Dogs and cats and tigers are always busy trying to find something to eat or a place to sleep, or trying to defend and have sexual intercourse successfully. In the human form of life, however, one should be intelligent enough to ask what he is, why he has come into the world, what his duty is, who is the supreme controller, what is the difference between dull matter and the living entity, etc. There are so many questions, and the person who is actually intelligent should simply inquire about the supreme source of everything. Athato Brahma Jigyansa. A living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence, but in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire about his spiritual identity. This is the real human intelligence. It is said that one who is simply conscious of the body is no better than an animal, even though he be in the human form. In Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Sri Krishna said, Sarvasya chaham hridasannidishto smata mata smriti jnana apahanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. In the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with God. This is called apohanam or forgetfulness. In the human form of life, however, consciousness is more greatly developed, and consequently, the human being has a chance to understand his relationship with God. In human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions, just as Puranjana, the living entity, is asking the unknown girl, where she has come from, what her business is, why she is present, etc. These are the inquiries about Atma Tattva, self realization. The conclusion is that unless A living entity is inquisitive about self-realization. He is nothing but an animal. Text 27. क एतेनुपतायत एकादश महाभतः एतवाललनाः शुभ्रो कोऽयं तेनिः पुरः सरः. Translation. My dear Lotus Eye, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? Purport: the 10 strong servants of the the 10 strong servants of the mind are the five working senses and the five knowledge working senses, gathering senses. All these 10 senses work under the aegis of mind. The mind and the 10 senses combine to become 11 strong bodyguards. The hundreds of women under the jurisdiction of the senses are addressed here as Lalanaha. The mind works under the intelligence, and under the mind are the 10 senses. And under the 10 senses are innumerable desires to be fulfilled. All these, however, depends upon the vital life force, which is here represented by the snakes. As long as the vital life force is there, the mind works, and under the mind, the senses work. And the senses give rise to so many metal desires. Actually, the living entity known as Puranjana is embraced by so many paraphernalia. All his paraphernalia simply constitute different sources of anxiety. But one who is surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who leaves all the businesses to him, is freed from such anxiety. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises a person who has taken to the materialistic way of life, which is never permanent but always temporary, to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and leave aside all his so called responsibilities in order to get free from all anxiety. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnavastaya Bhutale Samarte Bhaktivedanta Swami Vinamya Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pascharya Desatarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thanks for joining and giving me the opportunity to speak on this lecture and verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, uh, we are talking about King Puranjana, and as you know, in Bhagavatam or in the scriptures, so we have the real story, and some are called the metaphorical stories, right? So there are two type of things we'll find in the shastras. So this is one of the called the metaphorical story. The metaphorical means which basically not happened, but it is a kind of lesson to the living entities. Okay, and for example, Ramayana, Mahabharata. So they are the real incidents, right? So so to teach the lessons to to the all living entities. So this Puranjana story is basically, you know it Puranjana means Pura Anjana means uh, the the person who is living inside the body, that is known as Puranjana, right? So who will be the response? Who is the Puranjana? Which means the person who is living inside the body, which is known as Atma. But those living entities who are always going for going up for the sense gratification, always looking for the sense gratification, and they do not have any kind of atma tattva, or do not proceed for the inquisitiveness of of to find who why he came here. So these kind of persons known as Puranjana, those do not inquire about the existence. So if I go a little bit behind this Purandana pastimes, or the story start with the king Prachinavanshi, right? As you know that. So the king actually, the Prachinavari, he is was the very prominent, particularly in Srimad Bhagavatam there are so many descriptions, and also he's known as, he is described as Prachinavari as a highly devoted to elaborate Vedic rituals and sacrifices. But he basically the king Prachinavari, so he was belongs to the Karma Kanda section. He follows the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, right? Who is led to slaughter of so many animals despite his devotion. He was deeply absorbed in metal world. The story of Puranjana like starts with the when the says Narada appeared before Prachinavari and narrated the the allegorical story of King Puranjana to teach him a higher spiritual lesson. Then this particular chapter or this particular pastime, which compares the human body to a city of living beings, worldly attachment to king's possessions, was meant to help the king Prachinavari transcend his fixation on fruitive activities. Through Narada's guidance, Prachinavari realized the temporary nature of this material life and the spiritual purpose that lay beyond ritualistic sacrifices. He began to focus on pure devotional service, hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord. Right? And then what happened later point of time? He gave up his worldly attachment, the king, and achieved the ultimate goal of life. What happened after learning the story of Puranjana? The king Prachinavari gave up his worldly attachment and achieved the ultimate goal of life, return to the spiritual world, right? So here we are talking about King Puranjana. So who is the King Puranjana? King Puranjana is known as nothing but a living entity, right? Means who lives inside the body, that is soul, representing the conditioned living entity. Basically, we say that is Nitya Siddha, Nitya Mukta, right? So we are known as Nitya Siddha, those are those are conditioned living entities. So these are known as Puranjana, right? So Puranjana means those are representing the conditioned living entities, and and so what happened? The king Puranjana is asking the mysterious questions to the young woman, and who represents the young woman here? Thus, the intelligence is known as the the young woman. So, because Puranjana, the soul, becomes attached to the omen, the omen means we can say here, you know, here also this particular verse we're talking about, since this inquiry, is basically the allegorical story. It comes from highlight the purpose of human life to seek spiritual self-realization instead of becoming lost in the material attachment. So, so it says that the as I mentioned before, who is that? Who is that woman? The woman is known as called the material intelligence. It's not the real intelligence. It's called the material intelligence because Puranjana, the soul, becomes attached to the woman, the material intelligence. He becomes overwhelmed by the anxieties and miseries of material life, forgetting his eternal relationship with his true friend, the Supreme Lord. That's why the Lord says in the in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, सर्वस्य चाहम हृदय सन्निविष्ट स्मतमति ज्ञान अपहरणम च वेदस्य सर्व अहमय वेद्य Vedanta Krodhavat Videva Chaham, which means Lord says if someone wants to forget his identity, then the Lord, as a Chaitya Guru, lives in the heart. Always try to remind him about his consciousness. But if the devotee or sorry, if a person wants to becomes forgetful in his life, so then Lord he says that he becomes he completely forget the relationship with this God. That is called apohanamcha. Similarly, uh, here we're talking about King Puranjana. So represents the living, the living so Jivatma, and then here mentioned the city of nine gates, basically the physical body with its nine openings, like two eyes, two ears, two nostrils, mouth, anus, and genitals. So these are known as the city of nine gates. And the mysterious young woman, as I mentioned, represents buddhi or intelligence, the mental intelligence. The questions posed by King Puranjana are interested as a metaphor for the necessary spiritual inquiries of a person in the human form of life. So the very interesting thing is that Prabhupada starts with this commentary with the Athartha Brahma Jigyasa. So Prabhupada usually, if you read, if you heard about Prabhupada's lecture, Prabhupada used to quote this particular verse many times. Ahara nidra bhayamaitham cha samayam etat pasuvisnaranam dharmo hi tesam adhiko deseso dharma dharmena hinaha pasubhi samanaha, which means both animals and men shares the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But the special property of the human is that they are able to engage in spiritual life. Therefore, without spiritual life, the humans are on the level of animals. Even Srimad Bhagavatam says, if a person not doing any bhakti, just doing the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, that particular human is considered as four-legged animals, right? How it is the four-legged animals it is compared to? Because the cow has four legs, but the human form has two legs, right? But Bhagavatam says still that human is known as four legs. Two hands is two legs and two legs is two legs. So total four-leg animal. That's what the Bhagavatam describes the human if it did not do perform the bhakti. So we can take an example of Sabari, right? So what happened because Sabari's father at that time, before the marriage, or during the time of marriage, there is a kind of big feast. So in the big feast, once just before one day of marriage, Sabari saw there is lots of animals are in the animal sale. So then she asked his father, why these animals are in the animal sale. So then her father responded like, because tomorrow is your marriage, and so this is for the feast. Oh, somebody said, then the animals, the animals look at Sabri's eyes, and so then the animals are looking, to get out of these situations, and so Sabri has so much compassion for the animals. She said, just for the sake of my marriage, so many animals will be sacrificed for this purpose only, for my marriage purpose only. It's better I should not involved in this kind of in this kind of in this kind of the biblical society. I just want to leave. So what she did at the time, she asked the same question to the intelligence, the buddhi, and she decided to leave the the palace. And see what she did. She left the house, and so then she went to the forest. As you know the story, at the end, the supreme personality of God, Lord Sri Ram, came and meet Sabri. So it's the story realized that you have to be user intelligence. So unnecessary sacrifice of the annual sacrifices, right? It's not good. So whoever, if someone do good karma, he will go to the heavenly planet. That's for sure. And if someone do the bad karma, he is go to hellish planet. So it means what of the karma you have to perform in this material world, either it is a good or it is a bad. So either way, you have to be suffered for that. You have to be enjoy or you have to suffer, right? So the ultimate goal of life is attaining the ultimate goal is means to attain the Krishna and it goes back onto the Godhead. So we'll have to be for the inquisitive for the karma, which will be lead us to the path of self-realization. King Puranjana therefore represents the living entity. For each living entity may be said to be the king or the master of his own body. The country here is the represent the country of Panchal, represents the atmosphere in which one can enjoy one's senses, and the capital city represents the body itself. The city's walk paths and the towers, gates, and so on depend the skin, hair, and all, like as you know in the previous chapters. And So then the Sanskrit word, Chandavega means passing very swiftly. So King Chandavega represents time, and so King Chandavega means the time, you know, attacked the city of King Puranjana with 360 males and female soldiers who represents the day and night of the year. As each day and night pass, one has lost another day of one's life. In the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions, just as Puranjana. The living entity is asking the unknown girl where she has come from, what her business is, why she is present, etc. These are inquiries about Atma Tattva, self-realization. The conclusion is that unless a living entity is inquisitive about self-realization, he is nothing but an animal. The 10 strong servants of the mind are the five working senses and the five knowledge gathering senses. All these 10 senses work under the aegis of the mind. The mind and the 10 senses combine the become the strong 11 bodyguards. Prabhupada, in his commentary, explained that the human intelligence is used to inquire about the ultimate source of everything, like Atharva Brahma Jignasa, we talked about. A person who only uses their intelligence for bodily and mental concern is no better than an animal. By discipline, prudence, inquiry, the Lord demonstrates the first step toward self-realization, Atma Tattva, and then curiosity directed at the unknown woman should ideally be directed inward toward understanding one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. So then the narrative establishes that the soul's entanglement with the material nature is a choice, not a force. The living entity is a hero who can either become a servant of the senses or master of them. Puranjana, Puranjana's attraction to the omen and his subsequent inquiries shows his initial choice to become a servant of his senses and material intelligence. So, those who pursue sense gratification, it emphasizes that true freedom from anxiety comes from surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead rather than becoming otherwise will becoming entangled with the temporary affairs of the material world. So, with this note, I'll stop here. Please forgive me if I made any mistakes while summarizing this particular verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam.